Mother of an LAPD officer who died of spinal cord injuries says he was beaten during a training exercise meant to simulate a mob. She's making these claims in a new wrongful death lawsuit in Los Angeles. Alex Capriello is joining us live with this story. So sad.
Shocking new details inside a wrongful death lawsuit filed against the city of Los Angeles. The family of Houston Tipping, a 32-year-old Los Angeles police officer, claimed their son was repeatedly struck in the head by fellow officers, suffering multiple breaks in the neck, which caused his death. At his funeral, his father broke down in front of a large crowd of LAPD's top brass and Mayor Eric Garcetti.
His life mattered. His days had become a sacred calling.
The story about Houston Tipping, who was killed by his fellow officers in training, as you saw there, ended with that funeral where his father is heartbroken. Let's keep it real, because they beat him to death. His mom even said some of those fellow officers that were carrying his casket were part of that death.
Jesus Christ.
It's even worse. Let's watch more.
According to a public LAPD release last month, Tipping was grappling with another officer at the training academy when he fell to the floor and suffered a spinal cord injury. But the lawsuit claims it was several officers simulating a mob when Tipping was beaten to death. Police Chief Michael Moore did not specifically address the details of the incident when he took to the podium at the funeral, only calling it a tragic accident.
We've lost a bright light that shined into the darkness. And while we will miss him, we will never forget him.
In the lawsuit, the family questioned the merit of the training exercise, pointing to other injuries to officers in the past. The department has launched its own investigation to determine if any changes need to be made.
The department has launched their investigations themselves to see if they should not do what they did that just murdered one of their officers in training. Here's a few more details, because Captain Kelly Muniz, who is the LAPD spokeswoman, said on Friday that the department could not comment on the claim or the nature of the training exercise because they're investigating themselves.
Just about 3:32 p.m., members of the Metropolitan Police Department responded to the scene of the library at 18th and Good Hope Road for the report of a shooting. Our officers arrived at this location and found a library police officer unconscious, suffering from a gunshot wound. What we've learned so far is that there was a training that was taking place. The training was being conducted by a retired member from the Metropolitan Police Department, a retired lieutenant, was conducting training in one of the training rooms. And at some point during the course of at the end of the training, the retired lieutenant fired a shot from a weapon that struck this police officer, and the police officer was taken to an area hospital and has since been pronounced.
Horrific situation out there in DC, because it was a joke as that, I mean, maybe he didn't point out there, but what ended up being a joke from a training session ended up killing one of these police trainees out in DC. Let's go to some more details of how this went down, because involuntary manslaughter is now the charge that's coming to this guy. So this, through a DC police spokesman, Dustin Sternbeck, he identified the retired lieutenant as Jesse Porter. He's 58 years old. He left the force in November of 2020. He's accused of fatally shooting Marika Amanyan, who was 25 years old, of Indian Head. Her relatives could not be reached. So this is what happened. A little more details in what the chief was saying there. Porter was contracted by the Anacostia Neighborhood Library to provide training for some of its officers on the use of extendable batons. I want you guys to remember that. They were training about extendable batons. That's according to police reports. He runs a private company called Porter Consulting. Online records show that. Websites describe Porter as a use of force consultant and a de-escalation and crisis intervention instructor. Police have said about 6 people were in the room at the time, including Porter, Mannion, and several other library police officers. At that point, witnesses interviewed during the charging document said that she told the class that she wasn't ready for the picture because she was still wearing her mask to protect against coronavirus. Then the group began laughing at her. That's according to the documents as well, because she had been having bad hair issues all day. There was video footage, sadly, which has not been released, but was referenced in the charging documents. It showed her removing her mask and placing it down on her side. Then that's when Porter came in his joke, and he said, here we go again. And he walked out of the picture line, picked up his handgun, turned and shot her in the chest. Witnesses described hearing a loud boom and then watching the 25-year-old collapse to the floor. And a DC police officer who responded to the scene said she saw Porter performing CPR on her and heard him say something like, "I thought I had my training gun. Why did I do this? Is she okay?" And all that. So as he's trying to do something about it. So I remember this happened earlier, Burbank, before you were working with us. And this was a trainee out in Michigan. And we did this video a few months ago on the show. And he was just like this voluntary trainee, and he's gonna be the bad guy in the situation. And he ran in and he acted like he was fighting, and the police trainer, or I think it was the trainer or one of the people that was actually doing it, picked up a real gun instead of the training gun and shot him in the stomach. This guy survived though. In this case, it was more tragic than that because she got shot in the chest and she later passed away. I'm trying to figure out why and he didn't know which gun was his. We've seen for tasers getting substituted for a gun, and then now a training gun, you can't tell the difference. Why is it there? I mean, it's the simplest question.
Yeah, why is there live ammunition in it? Same questions we were asking. I remember when Hutchins was shot on the set of Rust with Alec Baldwin. And it's just like, is it necessary for there to be live ammunition loaded into the gun? Also, taking a few steps back, why do armed security officers need to be in libraries? I understand that the DC Public Library might have some important records. Keep those locked away. Why do people in the library need to have guns? I'm really unsettled by like armed security being everywhere. It doesn't seem necessary. So I think if we step back and think about that and wonder what it's for, maybe this situation could have been avoided, right? If I make a mistake in a training, which I have before, if I'm teaching someone how to shake a drink bartending, one time I was teaching them how to shake a drink in a way I don't usually shake it, and it fell on the floor, right? If I make a mistake in a training there, nobody dies. I mean, you've got to be much more careful if you're giving trainings about guns. You don't need to have the gun loaded for the training. It's not necessary.